So I'm not normally one of those people who love bad movies, except 2009's Avatar. However, I am genuinely obsessed with 2021's Cruella, and that movie is awful. I have a very contentious relationship with these Disney live-action remakes in that I think most of them are bad. I do like some, mostly the ones that aren't just carbon copies of the original, like, The Lion King or Beauty and the Beast, but instead use the bones of the original film to kind of expand and sometimes improve what's presented to us. Films like Cinderella and The Jungle Book come to mind. In theory, I should like Mulan because of that, but that movie is bad. Which obviously isn't a remake, but is a live-action adaptation of an animated film. It's technically a prequel to the live-action 101 Dalmatians, which was the second live-action Disney remake after 1994's The Jungle Book, of course. I think the reason I have a fascination with this film is that it's a prequel that somehow doesn't explain anything about the character that we actually care about, and the stuff that it does explain doesn't make any sense at all, and in some cases contradicts what we know from the original movie. And because my friends are sick and tired of me ranting about this to them, I'm making this. But for starters, I do want to say I think Emma Stone is really good in this movie. I think she crushes the role. I think she's probably easily the best part about this movie. Anyways, the first red flag of this film is literally at the beginning. Now hear me out. The most iconic thing about Cruella de Vil is her hair. So I, and I assume others, guess that the film would have some explanation as to why and how her hair ended up like that, because it can't be natural, right? And wouldn't you know it, the film actually starts right off the bat with explaining why her hair is the way it is. And you want to know how the film explains it?
From the very beginning, I've always made a statement. Not everyone appreciated that.
That's unfortunate.
Yeah, she's just born with it. That's it. She just has had that hair since birth. Half black and half white hair. That's just it. Never mind that most children lose their hair after childbirth, and the hair that grows back is oftentimes not the same color. In an effort that almost reads as them mocking the audience, Cruella, or Estella, which is her real name, uses a wig to hide her skunk hair. And that wig is ginger, which, while it isn't Emma Stone's natural hair color, it is her signature color. So Estella conceals her hair color, but she also develops an alter ego in an attempt to grow closer to the Baroness, a world-renowned designer. And when she first meets the Baroness, she's wearing a necklace Estella's mom used to wear. And don't worry, we'll be getting back to the mom in just a second. And this naturally catches Estella's eye, so she wants to learn more. But anyways, in this disguise, Estella actually uses her natural hair color since no one knows her with the skunk hair. It's kind of like a reverse Hannah Montana, where her day-to-day life, Estella wears a wig, but as famous designer Cruella, she wears her natural hair. Except Estella plays dangerously close to the fire in this scenario because she not only works for the Baroness in her day-to-day life as Estella, but she also actively antagonizes her as Cruella. But this is actually something I kind of do like since Cruella is publicly known to have black and white hair. I just think the idea of her being born with it is absolutely asinine. I truly think a smarter way to go about it would have been having her have her ginger hair to be born with, and then in an effort to kind of create a new identity while she's Cruella, she either wears a black and white wig or just dyes her hair outright. But honestly, it feels like they're mocking the audience in this way. It's like, oh, you want to know how Cruella got her hair? You want to know why that unnatural hair combo is the way it is? Well, she's just born with it. That's it. And it's like, that's not an explanation. That's just a throwaway. That's just you waving it away. Another thing I do want to bring attention to is the film's relationship to fur. Now, if you've seen any incarnation of 101 Dalmatians, you know that Cruella's one primary motivation is fur clothing. It's why she wants to buy Anita and Roger's puppies and already has a horde of Dalmatian puppies at the ready. But this film explicitly talks about how Cruella doesn't use fur in her designs. Now, she does kidnap the Baroness's 2 Dalmatians, and we'll get back to that in just a second. But the media just assumes she kidnapped them to use them as fur in her designs, but she doesn't actually do that. And besides that, the film never even touches on a hint of an obsession with fur, which again is her one defining character trait.
They really would make fabulous coats.
The dogs?
I'm joking.
Questions are being raised over whether her coat was real Dalmatian.
Madam, are you celebrating?
Oh, indeed I am.
Now, I can understand that if that film was supposed to be like framed as an alternate retelling a la Maleficent, but that's not what the film presented to us is. What is promised for us is an origin story for Cruella de Vil, the iconic villain who's obsessed with fur. And I don't want this to seem like I'm condoning what Cruella did. Obviously, I think kidnapping puppies to use them in a fur coat is abhorrent, and I don't condone it at all, but that is quite literally the character's most notable character trait and the thing that makes her such an iconic villain. And you're kind of just taking that one personality trait away from her, so like what is left of the character if you do that? There's literally nothing left of the character, except that she makes clothes, I guess, and has weird hair. Anyway, let's get back to those Dalmatians. Probably the most iconic thing about this movie, and the thing that like went viral on social media when it came out, is the beginning, where Estella's adopted mom, the Baroness is her real mom by the way, is killed by Dalmatians pushing her off a cliff. But that doesn't serve any purpose except making Cruella an orphan. Like, she doesn't harbor any Dalmatian-related trauma or plots some sort of revenge or, breeds a hatred of Dalmatians.
I'll allow it.
Maybe that's why she wants to make a Dalmatian coat, but I feel like if that's the case, that's probably one of the first things she would have ever done. Even kidnapping the Dalmatians more so has to do with getting revenge on the Baroness than anything relating to the dog specifically. But the real kicker comes at the end of the film. Basically, due to an overly contrived plot that I will not be getting into right now, the Baroness gets arrested and Estella inherits her estate. But the key detail is that Estella has been murdered by the Baroness, and this allows her to live as Cruella permanently. And as part of this, Cruella inherits the 2 Dalmatians that killed her mom, because why not? But that's not even like the worst part about this. No, that comes at the mid-credit sequence. It is revealed that Cruella's 2 new dogs have had puppies, and she gives the puppies to people who helped her rise to fame. Anita and Roger. Yes, from the movie. And obviously those puppies are Pongo and Perdita. So it is implied that essentially Cruella sets up the events of 101 Dalmatians. And it just reads at some overly elaborated 4D chess plot to get the puppies to make a fur coat, but it's like, why can't you just breed them herself? Like, it's much less work to just keep them in your own possession and is much more discreet. Does she want Roger and Anita to end up together and have their puppies be puppies? And I'm just realizing this now, but if they come from the same litter, doesn't that technically mean Pongo and Perdita are related? I'm not getting into that right now. I cannot get into that right now. It's one of those things where, like, the more I think about it, the more I hate it, and the more things I find about it that make me hate it. So, earlier, I quickly compared this film to Maleficent, which does share a lot of similarities too. After all, they're both live-action origin stories of some of Disney's most iconic villains. But unlike Maleficent, and something Maleficent is often compared to, Wicked, this is presented as just a straight origin story. Both Maleficent and Wicked are presented as an alternate retelling and kind of framed as the story you don't know or the real story. But that's not the case with Cruella. This is like supposed to be just the origin of Cruella de Vil. But how can you make an origin story where you don't explain any of the character's most famous traits? I do know that we're getting a sequel, but I honestly don't know what that would even entail. Like, how much before 101 Dalmatians does this film take place? Will the sequel allow Cruella to actually be a villain, or are they going to be like the Maleficent sequel and turn her even more into a hero? Like I said at the beginning, I do like the live-action Disney remakes that try something new rather than just go by the book. But Cruella makes some frankly absurd decisions to, I don't know, make the film more palatable. I know fur is justifiably looked down upon, but as a villain, wouldn't we want Cruella to go all in on these disavowed practices? Now, Disney is the ultimate 4-quadrant studio. Literally no Disney-branded film is rated R. But this isn't a hero story. This is a villain's origin story. We want to love to hate the character. She is someone who tries to murder puppies. And if you can't make a film about a villain without changing the character completely, why even make the movie? Obviously, a big part of these Disney live-action remakes are making them woke. And one of these ways is, like, justifying the villain's morally reprehensive character traits. Look at Beauty and the Beast with Gaston or Cinderella with Lady Tremaine. They kind of go out of their way to make them somewhat sympathetic by giving them tragic backstories. The Disney animated films themselves have stopped having true out-and-out villains for about a decade now, and now it seems as though Disney wants to turn all of its villains into anti-heroes, which I think is a shame. I mean, we're literally getting a Mufasa origin story, and I cannot wait to see what kind of tragic backstory they give him in an attempt to garner sympathy. And I sure can't wait to see what they do with the Evil Queen and Ursula in those live-action remakes. And this is kind of a small point I already talked about, but I think including so many characters from the original movie is a mistake since we already know where those characters end up, which, as I said, sometimes directly contradicts what's presented to us in the film. Anita is supposed to be a childhood friend of Cruella in this movie, and if this is a prequel to the live-action film, as is implied, Anita ends up working for Cruella, but in this film she's a journalist, not a fashion designer. I think Roger in that film is a video game designer. Here he's a lawyer who becomes a songwriter. This is not a novel point, but sometimes it feels like Disney is just looking at IP first when making a film, and I think the result of that is something like Cruella, where we try to make a villain a hero, and in doing so, basically contradict everything we know about the character. And I don't know why Disney thinks villains are so bad. I mean, shouldn't they represent the, evils of society that we are trying to go up against? Even to this day, the Disney villain franchise is one of the most popular sub-brands within the Disney machines. You have merch, costumes, dedicated villains parties. I just don't know why they're so scared of villains. We don't need to know these tragic origin stories so we can be sympathetic. We want villains that we can hate. Yes, sometimes more three-dimensional villains are good. Not every villain has to be a one-dimensional evil sack. But if you're taking your iconic villains and kind of dulling the edges around them that make them villains, it kind of just lessens the characters, especially for a company like Disney where one of their biggest tenets is brand integrity. I'm just baffled at the decisions they make that kind of just erode everything that we love about the characters. But that's about all I have to say about Cruella, and probably more than anyone ever wants to hear about Cruella. So let's all get ready for the Oogie Boogie origin story, where we find out that the bug who acted as his brain saw his mom get squished by Jack Skellington.
That's cool. Her name's Estella, not Cruella.
Do you know what this car's called? A devil! It's DeVille, mate. DeVille.
I like her.
I thought about buying a wig for this, like a black and white wig, but I don't think this will perform well enough to justify that purchase. So I just did these instead. And this red shirt is kind of, I guess in tribute to her red dress. Most of my stuff is going to be more research based, but I need to put something out and those take a while. So this is just kind of like me putting out content for fun.